Hey Ron Paul supporters, thought I'd make a quick vid because there's some disturbing things going on with the Rand Paul endorsement of Romney, and also people are starting to suspect maybe Webster Tarpley was right in his criticisms of Ron Paul, and maybe Ron Paul is not all who he makes himself out to be. This is kind of disturbing to me, so I thought I'd try to make this video real quick and get this out there to as many people as possible. A word on the Rand Paul endorsement. Rand has been lukewarm for forever, and he's, a couple weeks ago or so, he said Romney, he was a businessman, and so I think he would do good in government, and he knows a little bit more about how to deal with the economy and stuff. I mean, we all know that's nonsense. Romney destroyed businesses, and what does it take to destroy a business? And he's just he's not seeing beyond the superficial surface of it. I think, and there's an additional nuance that. This Bilderberg meeting that just happened recently, there were actually some death threats. Probably not sure if the ones expressed there were serious, but it's very likely, just as Ross Perot, his family was threatened, and he could have probably maybe won the election back in I guess it was '92. He stopped his campaign. So, there may be some of that happening here. Who knows exactly what all happens behind closed doors. But I definitely believe that's definitely... But anyway, we have to remember that Rand Paul is not his father. He's not Ron Paul. Ron Paul's always held 100% strong convictions, and Ron Paul has not come out and endorsed Romney. And if he did, believe me, I would turn against Ron Paul too, but he has not, and Ron Paul can't control Rand Paul. That's not really fair. Now, as for some of the allegations that Webster Tarpley has made, he's really good at intel, as far as I can tell. Some of the things he says are pretty astounding, but when it comes to Ron Paul, I think he's just totally senseless, and you have to remember that he's a Marxist, so he totally believes in socialism, and his whole philosophy is antithetical to libertarianism in the first place. So he had it against Ron Paul from the beginning, and he went on the Guns and Butter show. I looked at the transcript, and he was listened to a little bit, and he was just kind of suspicious at first. This was like December last year, and then apparently at the start of this year, he started saying that Ron Paul was an insider, that he was just running interference for Romney. So I have a few points to go over real quick here. He's obviously ignorant about the delegate process, because he's saying, he was freezing elections for trying to bring libertarians in so that they would vote for him, and then steal votes from Santorum, which did not happen in places like Colorado, Louisiana, etc., etc. So that didn't work very well, at least in some places. And another thing is, the straw polls don't mean anything, and both Tarpley and Alex Jones don't seem to understand this, because Alex Jones keeps saying that the media finally came out and admit that Ron Paul won those states, when that's not actually what's going on. They don't admit, and we all... I won't say we all, but many of us feel that there was voter fraud, and that's a whole other topic. But the media hasn't admitted to that's been going on. They've admitted that Ron Paul finally won the delegates. Most supporters know this, and anyone who's been through the delegate process understands this. But they don't understand this. They're not a part of the delegation process. So Tarpley thinks that Ron Paul was running interference for Romney, even though he's winning all these states. So he's totally ignorant of the process to begin with. So that point is pretty much invalid. Okay, in the mainstream media blackout of Ron Paul. Okay, so the establishment and the Bilderbergers, okay, they want Ron Paul to run interference for Romney and attract all these voters. They didn't do a very good job of getting him enough exposure in the media then. Or maybe he thinks that he just got the right amount, but just the whole thing doesn't even really make sense. Why they would just totally black him out and only give him a few seconds in one of the debates. So that point doesn't make any sense to me. Let's go on. So now he's saying that, he's following this talking point about how, Rand Paul getting a vice president slot would bring his supporters, Ron Paul supporters, in to vote for Romney, but just royal outrage at Rand Paul endorsing Romney shows that we would not do such a thing, because our minds have been awakened to these principles and not to a person. This is what we've been saying all along. It's not a personality cult. We understand better now how things are supposed to work. So even if Ron Paul turned, we would not follow him because we would consider him a Benedict Arnold. And I've been libertarian much longer, but many people many of you have changed your minds just listening to him speak. So that's kind of antithetical, but Tarpley doesn't see this because he disagrees with the liberty. He thinks that the Bilderberg group is libertarian in their outlook, like they want austerity. They just want to cut welfare and that they want that the rich will get that wealth will be consolidated if there's a free market and just absurd stuff. So he doesn't see that he thinks that Romney. Okay, and this point was lower down on the list, but I want to get into this. That the Romney kind of rising up to the forefront and Obama kind of steadily going down. That this would mean more cuts and of government spending. But okay, Paul Ryan is obviously one of Romney's guys. He's campaigned with him and everything. That was that whole sub sandwich scandal. If you've heard of that, they were in on that together. Paul Ryan proposed cuts on spending increases. So not a cut on actual spending, but on future increases. So that's completely different than austerity. And all Ron Paul wants to do is, at least I haven't. I have the Restore America plan right here, and it says. So in general, it says spending return to 2006. Oh, that's terrible austerity. Oh no, we can't handle that. We certainly can't handle 2006 levels. According to Tarpley, that's just going to ruin our nation. Because apparently in 2006, people were dying. There was mass genocide. Anyway, back to where I was on this list. So anyway, we're not being misdirected, right? We all believe that very few, like some comment on someone that was saying that they would just want to get Obama out. This was on Daily Paul. Someone was like, they were like, oh yeah, you're one of 10 who would vote for Romney out of the Ron Paul group. So we all see that they're the exact same. It doesn't even matter. I mean, Ron Paul, he did run ads against Romney, but it doesn't even matter how many he did. We all see through it. Now, just look at how people have turned against Jesse Benton, and Tarpley acknowledges this. And even some people were suspecting Doug Weed when Doug was saying he was going to have this big announcement, and then ended up being kind of this, petering out in this kind of general talk that people were just disappointed, and then Ron Paul was saying he was going to withdraw from these rallies or whatever, and people were like, "Oh no!" Like, even some people were even suspecting that Ron Paul had been kidnapped or some loony theory, but it shows that most of us are highly suspicious a lot of the time, and we're not just following people blindly. Now, I think part of the reason that the Paul campaign is so they seem out of touch with the grassroots, but that just goes to illustrate the libertarian principle that the bigger an organization is, the more bureaucratic it becomes, and less efficient it is. So the grassroots has really been driving this campaign. Now, so they don't. I think their delegate count is often underestimated, and they're talking about being respectful, and I think they just don't see the full brunt of it. Now, Doug, he makes lots of blog posts about it, so but I think that also it has been infiltrated, like some people have said. So there's some of that going on too. I mean that's not surprising. Such opposition, conspiracy theorists or not, you got to know that they're going to try to co-opt this. Anyway, that's not the grassroots. That's the campaign. And that's another point. It doesn't matter what the campaign says. We're not going to roll over and just let whatever happen. We are going to take this fight to the finish. I hope you do. This is part of why I'm making this video, to make sure that this flow is not abated. We can, and I fully believe that we may have close to half, if not a majority, of the delegates. I mean, how many states has Romney won? Very, very, very few. And we've at least gotten half, and there maybe been a couple states that Romney's won, but even in the primary states where it's supposed to be proportionally selected, we know that now, though, this has been a widespread realization that Rule 38 says that we can vote our conscience. I'm not a national delegate. I'm just speaking, as like part of the collective body of supporters, and the law backs that up. The delegates cannot be coerced. So anyway, there's a definitely possibility that it could still be pulled off, as long as we do not give up and not let ourselves be misdirected and give in to this allure that this socialist Tarpley is trying to pull over us. He says that the Bilderbergers are all for Ron Paul and everything. And why he still hasn't addressed the fact that they had all these expressed all these death threats against him and curses and hate him so much. And he cites how Peter Thiel, he's on the Bilderberg steering committee, and he's given so much money to Ron Paul, but Ron Paul can't control that. I mean and that's just, how is that not just another method of co-option? Okay, so here's one of the most insane points about this whole thing, about this whole theory. Okay, now this is one of Tarpley's strong points in finding shit out about Obama. Now, Obama has had he was publicized as being born in Kenya for like almost 17 years, right up into 2007, his presidential campaign, right up, and he's Tarpley, one of his biggest points is that Obama was groomed for the presidency. So they couldn't get their shit straight for, like, I mean, they couldn't, stop that, like, several years before at least. I mean, they kept this thing going until right up to the campaign. They couldn't make sure that he didn't publish that he was born in Kenya. And I'm not disputing that. I mean, they just think we're stupid, I'm not disputing that was actually what was going on. But if they think that we're that stupid, and they do something like that, yet somehow they have Ron Paul voting constitutionally for 30 years and openly talking about the drug war, how the devastation it brings, and about minorities being discriminated against, about just being anti-war, like anti-unconstitutional wars, and all these other things. And saying this for 30 years. So they groomed this guy to say for 30 years to have these standards that are totally fraudulent. Oh, except for these, the fact that, he's libertarian, and that's exactly what the Bilderbergs want, apparently. So this is his whole idea that somehow they could get Ron Paul straight for 30 years, but they can't get Obama straight, Doesn't make any sense. Now, Ron Paul did vote to go after Osama bin Laden, just to get in and out, and that would have been way better than what we got. Now, Ron Paul, I mean, this is one of Tarpley's sticking points too, that he doesn't not come out and say that 9/11 was an inside job, but Ron Paul said that he doesn't believe that it's an inside job. And he says, well, he went and told the truthers that there'd be an investigation or whatever. But that doesn't mean that he still doesn't want an investigation. I mean, he wants complete transparency, whether he believes that it was an inside job or not. And he could also be, let it happen, like LIHOP, let it happen on purpose, believes that they just allowed it to happen and kind of facilitated it. So maybe that's where he really stands. I don't know. That's why he says the government didn't do it. Anyway, on to the next thing. Okay, so now the next thing is that Tarpley says that Ron Paul was going to cut, on his Restore America plan, cut 15% from the Pentagon spending and cut 66%, I'm not sure he's getting his numbers, 60% of food stamps, and I can show you right here on the screen. I don't know where he's getting these numbers from, but I don't know, it might be hard to see. Okay, so we can see up here, Department of Defense, 15%. Okay, you can see that. But then come down here, food stamps, block grant, spending freeze. Okay, yeah, I don't see any spending cuts there. Spending freeze, spending freeze, spending freeze. And he said, yeah, Ron Paul said that that he would just hold off on that and not just pull the rug out from under people. But then you look on the site and it says something different. No, it says there's a spending freeze, so just not spend any more. That's exactly what he's campaigned on. So that's, I mean, I showed you for yourself. I mean, what more do you need? Okay, and then on some of the philosophy differences, he kind of, and I'm almost done here. I know it's a long video, but he cites Chancellor Brüning, who's Chancellor just before Hitler came into power in Germany, and he said that Brüning, by imposing his austerity and spending cuts, he destroyed the economy. Okay, well, if you actually go and research Brüning, he imposed all these taxes on the health industry, and all these patients had to pay increased taxes and everything, and no telling what else he did. But I mean, if that's that's not going to screw with the economy, I don't know what kind of la land you're living in. I think that's just not going to have any effect on the economy. That was totally interventionist. It's not like you just cut government spending and that happened. And then he goes on to say that unfortunately libertarians don't have any examples of how the government cut spending and things just got better. Yeah, we do. And he also says that that we should, this whole idea that we should just let things, the full ferocity of it just come forth, and that things just level out on their own, and that we should. He thinks that we can just kind of control it to where it doesn't. And what doesn't make sense about this is that the Federal Reserve is responsible for all these booms and busts and controls things to where they don't get so bad, and they try to pull things back up through inflation. And so I don't know what this, how he reconciles this cognitive dissonance. Anyway, I guess I'd have to read or hear more of what he has to say on that, but it doesn't make any sense, obviously. So anyway, that's his philosophy on it. But we do have a couple examples that Ron Paul has cited. And I first heard Tom Woods speak on this, and I was delighted to hear Ron Paul talk about it as well. The Depression from 1920 to 1921, you don't hear about that because it ended up being pretty much nothing in the end. I mean, it was pretty bad for a year, and then the government actually did nothing, and the economy came back out on top. And then after World War II, there were a whole bunch of spending cuts that happened, and the Keynesians were like, "Oh no, we got to spend more, or we can't spend, or we can't cut spending because that would create." Because all these people coming from the war and they need jobs, and it's just a bunch of nonsense. Anyway, cut spending in half, and then the economy kind of skyrocketed from there. So, just in case anyone was kind of hypnotized by Tarpley into thinking Ron Paul's this kind of he's this agent or something, and then from there kind of gradually hooked onto these socialist ideas. I know most Ron Paul supporters wouldn't be, but in case there are any kind of new supporters of Ron Paul, anyway, be confident that Tarpley's theories don't make any sense, and I think we can rest on Ron Paul's record. As for what he will do from here on out, highly doubt that he will renege on his standards and principles. Now you have to think, when you're running into this stuff all day, and not only in the media but politicians, and trying to go to Washington and get hit like a brick wall, and then maybe even getting death threats. That's got to discourage you a good bit. But if we keep encouraging him, then I believe that he will be encouraged to stay true. In case there's any temptation at all to falter or to support someone who's not any better than Obama. And Ron Paul did say he would be negligibly better than Obama, but he can't anyway endorse him. I don't even think he'd be negligibly better, but I think Ron Paul, he's a bit. I hate to use this word, but maybe a little bit too trusting. I was going to say almost naive. I don't think he's naive, because he sees through a lot of crap, but almost like he will only believe someone if they do what they say. But he almost sometimes seems to think that people might change, like Bernanke, like adopting the gold standard. I don't think so. Hillary Clinton talking about pulling out of Afghanistan. Well, obviously that didn't happen. Anyway, I rambled on enough. Hopefully this will help people think a little more clearly about this whole issue, and I need to get to bed, so it's late at night for that. Anyway, I'm going to have to almost redo this video to make it a little shorter or something, but hope it go viral, because it's kind of, I'm sure it's kind of long, I don't know. Let's see. 25 minutes, oh wow, nice. Well, if you've stuck through this whole thing, then kudos, and thank you very much for listening to my rambling, and I'll see you later.